Welcome to our brand new channel.
Look at this guy over here, the ham. Hi, this is the YouTube channel Autistic Acceptance. So this is a YouTube channel where about this is a YouTube channel where the goal is to get acceptance for people with autism, and I actually am autistic myself, and I just have a regular son over here, and pretty sure the dog is not autistic. We don't think so. So this here is Jacob, and I'm Fred. And I'm Fred, and this here is Sherman, the Shermanator. And so the goal of this channel is really to bring acceptance to people with autism. It's to inform people about autism because so many people have assumptions about autism. They watch movies like Rain Man or whatever, and of course they took that type of movie and they assumed that that was the way all autistic people are. And I actually think that Rain Man was a pretty good example of autism for that particular individual. But what you'll find is that autism is different from person to person. You'll find that a lot of people have a lot of characteristics that are similar in autism, but overall, each person is an individual. So I think the first thing I'd say is I am autistic, but that doesn't make me an expert on autism. But I can certainly give some information about my experiences, and in a lot of cases there'll be a lot of other autistic people who have similar characteristics as well. So I think, maybe you watch this channel and then you realize that your family has similar characteristics to what I have, and maybe perhaps they're autistic, or maybe they're already diagnosed and you're just going to learn from my experiences. So that's in a nutshell the point of the channel. But ultimately it's to inform the public and also to hopefully create some acceptance, because one of the first things, I guess I have to go into my experience. I was actually diagnosed with autism when I was 15 years old, and even though I was going for counseling, etc., during that period of time, the focus for the counseling wasn't really on autism. I had some other focuses for the counseling that totally went well above and beyond the focus on autism. They were more serious, they were more personal, and they were being addressed. And so, it was sort of like, hey, you're autistic, and yeah, let's talk about the other stuff that's more important that we have to focus on. So, I really didn't get any guidance, and this was like 1993, somewhere around that, 92. So this was years ago when there wasn't a lot of information on autism, or at least not as much knowledge on it as there is today. And so it was sort of like, you're autistic and we don't have a manual for you. And there is still there's still an incredible lack of information on autism, actually. There's some good books out there. I'll certainly be talking about that in the future. But overall, it's a complicated disability, and there's just a need for more information. And hopefully I'll be able to have some cool observations. What we're talking about here is just the focus on, what am I looking to say here? Trying to get people with autism to be more accepted, because for me, my experience was that, I was diagnosed at 15, I was given no guidance, And so what happened was over the years after I was diagnosed, I was able to kind of begin to doubt my diagnosis. And so I would go back and forth between, yeah, I'm autistic. No, I'm not. Sure, I am. No, I'm not. And that would depend on how well I was doing at that time. So if I was succeeding at something, and in my opinion, autistic people weren't supposed to be successful at whatever it was I was doing well at, then there's no way I could be autistic. So, as an example, I was a competitive skier. I wasn't like a professional or anything, but I was actually pretty good. And I would rank, there might be 100 or 120 people in a race, and these were good skiers, and I could place around fifth or so. And so, autistic people don't have good coordination, would be the stereotype. We're not good athletically. We have poor muscle tone. How could I possibly do well at ski racing? And, you know, 15 years ago or 20 years ago, that would have totally been an argument I would have had. It doesn't make sense that I would do well at skiing because autistic people couldn't do that. Because when you look in a medical book or whatever, if you look in a book about autism, people who are autistic do not fit that criteria. So if you're going to learn in a book what autistic people can and can't do, you're going to make a lot of assumptions and you're going to make some incorrect ones. So yeah, but going back to what I'm saying, my success in skiing as an example was a reason for me to doubt my autism. But then there would be other situations where I would run into some issues that I couldn't explain, and it would turn out that I would then go back to the fact that maybe I do have autism. So this went back and forth for years. Years. And so about 4 years ago, I went ahead and applied for a college physical therapy program, actually as a physical therapist assistant at a community college. I guess your first assumption would be that being in a community college, it's going to be like podunk stuff. This was actually a really competitive program to get into. I had to maintain a 4.0 GPA. That's not true. I didn't have to maintain a 4.0 GPA. I maintained a 4.0 GPA in my prereq classes prior to getting into the community college, into the physical therapy program, because I wanted to ensure that I got into it. And so ultimately I got accepted. My understanding is there were about 120 applicants in a class of 20, so I was one of the ones to be accepted. Of course, being accepted was just proof that my son is back from walking the dog. What did you guys run a mile or something over there, or what?
No idea.
All right.
Oh, no.
You have no idea.
Oh, no.
Why are you so tired?
The dog wants to play a game of tug of war with me.
Isn't that cute? In the meantime, I got accepted into this physical therapy program. That kind of becomes more evidence that I'm not autistic, and because how can autistic people get into a physical therapy program? By the way, never mind that there are people out there who are medical doctors, right, who are autistic, and actually a higher percentage are autistic than you might want to believe. And they may not necessarily have the best bedside manner, or maybe they do, because that's another stereotype. But there it is. Chances are you may have been treated by somebody who was autistic, somebody who was on the spectrum, so to speak. So, back to what I was saying, I got accepted in this school. I kind of sorted out that I had autism. And as I went through the program, one thing about um, physical therapy, it requires good spatial abilities. It requires the ability to think on a three-dimensional level. It requires you to be able to remember your hand placement on a person, and move them through specific movements, etc. It became apparent that it took me significantly longer to learn, these a lot of those physical therapy methods that were physical. And so I was doing a good job at learning the concepts. I was doing a good job at learning the theory. I could think very quickly through a problem and come up with, many different solutions. But when it came to the actual physical aspect of doing physical therapy, it was hard. And a couple of times my instructor, meaning well, she wasn't meaning this as an insult or anything along those lines, she would watch me do certain therapy, and she'd say, "Wow, that was awkward," and she would seem surprised, sort of taken aback, almost, in my opinion, like she was kind of noticing. She was coming to a certain conclusion in her head, and so she might have very well suspected that maybe I didn't. Oh my God, I have somebody in my program with autism. Maybe. Maybe she was just puzzled. I don't know. But it was a possibility that she was thinking maybe I was autistic. So as I got these experiences several times, I came to the conclusion there was no other way to go about it. I was definitely autistic. And so that's where I've been since early in my physical therapy program. It finally made me accept a diagnosis that I've had for over almost 25 years now. Over 25 years. So that's been my experience. And so I can go into detail in other, I guess we'll call them episodes, as to why it would be difficult for me to ascertain whether I have autism or not. There's some cool stuff that you can learn from this channel. And so I'm going to have certain topics that I'm going to go over. And I'll cover those topics. And, so I think we're going to start out this channel with me going over some topics. And eventually we're going to get a GoPro, bro. We're going to get a GoPro. And when we do that, we're going to be out and about, and you'll be able to follow us on our day-to-day. And I'm sure we'll have some cool stuff for you. I mean, he's boring. Look how boring he is.
Are you serious?
Oh, he's just...
You serious?
No, I'm not.
I will get you.
He's pretty...
I will get you.
He's a pretty entertaining kid.
No, I will get you.
So the goal is we'll have a GoPro. We'll go out about, and you'll be able to see our day-to-day lives. The point of this, again, is so you can see that I have some of the traits of autism. You'll obviously see that. But I think you'll be surprised in some ways how well I can function. We'll see. We'll see. Maybe I'm overestimating how well I can function and how well I can hide my autism. But I'll let you be a part of times when it's obvious that I am. So where I stand right now is I'm just going to talk from a personal standpoint here. I just got today my physical therapist assistant license. I'm not going to show the information on it, but here it is. And actually, later on, we're going to show a film of me unpacking my physical therapist assistant license. And so I actually was licensed before this document came. It's not like 15 years ago where you had to wait for the document. Now I was already on the internet, so I was already established as a PTA. But that being said, getting the official document, I decided that would be the day for me to do my first my first video on YouTube. I just thought it was a good day, and this was a busy day. I can probably go into more detail, but one of the stereotypes of people with autism is that, we can't get jobs, we're always unemployed. Never mind the fact that statistically there's so many people who are not diagnosed or who are diagnosed in later life, who are around my age or older, and they're holding jobs, they've been married, they've had kids, they're not a part of the statistics, so the statistics are not accurate. It's been a busy day. Not only did I receive my license in the mail, but one of the stereotypes of people with autism is that we can't get jobs. I have yet to actually earn money as a PTA, but I have been applying for 3 weeks, and I guess the first couple weeks were I didn't really receive any offers, or I didn't really receive any interest. That's actually in the job market, in terms of looking for jobs, that's not a lot of time. So that's, I guess, to be expected. I live in Jacksonville, Florida, and in Jacksonville, it's a really competitive market for PTAs. A lot of people want to be on the beach. They want to be hanging out on the beach and riding the waves or whatever they want to do. So a lot of people are willing to come to Jacksonville and serve the market. So this is a market that has a lot more PTAs than where I moved from in Colorado. And so it is a challenge to get a job here. And so literally today, I started getting interested about a week ago from people, and I wound up having 2 different interviews scheduled for 11 a.m. today. I can't be in 2 different places at the same time, but there you go. I can officially claim I had 2 interviews at the same time. I decided on doing the that's my fidget spinner, dude.
Yeah, there you go.
My fidget spinner. Stereotype time. So there you go.
They're like, I don't know, back in 2016, bro.
What?
They're like, those were 2016.
Hey, you know what you need to do?
Yeah.
Take a shower. Big time. Can you do that, please? Yeah, my fidget spinner. So here's a stereotype for you. I have a fidget spinner. Take your bath. Take a shower, right? So, stop, dude. So back to what what am I looking to say here? Because, man, there's certainly a lot of distractions in this household. So, what I'm looking to do now is to, what I'm trying to say is, the stereotype is that autistic people can't get jobs. Well, we'll see. My plan is to try to get a job here in Jacksonville. It's hard for anybody with a PTA license because the market is so well served. So I'm going to be competing against some other students, and they're really looking in most jobs for people with at least a year of experience, sometimes 2 years of experience as a PTA, and I don't have any other than my clinicals, which I had as a intern when I had 3 separate internships as a part of my schooling, but that's standard. So in other words, all students are going to have that. This is not something unique to me as a student, or no, I'm not a student anymore. Whoa, I'm an official PTA. My bad. So, I had 2 interviews in one day. I had to decide and cancel one of the interviews, and so the job is actually right around the corner, and I'll find out by the end of the week whether I got the job or not. There are 5 other candidates for the position, so we'll see. In the meantime, I have a couple other places that had nothing to do with the interview I canceled, and they are looking at. They've been looking at my resume because what happens is that you'll see in some of these apps on your phone whether or not they viewed your um, resume or not, and they really only view resumes for candidates they're interested in. This particular place has been looking at my resume for the last 2 weeks, and I think what it is that they're probably not getting that many candidates because it's a part-time position, and so they're sitting there looking at my resume, which is pretty. Really, I have a nice resume. I'm not gonna lie. I'm good at it. But they're sitting there saying, "Man, this guy's he just graduated, and we want somebody with more experience." But at the same time, they're kind of going back and forth. My plan is to go there in the near future and drop off a thank you letter for considering me for a position there. This way I can stand out. And hopefully, my hope is if I go to the front desk and I say, look here, I'm just going to drop off this thank you letter for considering my application. And by the way, here's my resume. Maybe I'll even get an on-the-spot interview. In the meantime, I've seen a couple other places where I can apply, and that I have the direct contact information of the recruiter, and I found that to be pretty good way to kind of speed up the process. That's actually how I got my interview today. Actually, both my interviews were through recruiters, so come to think of it. So we'll see how that goes. But again, the theory would be that I couldn't even land an interview, let alone function well in the interview. If I don't get a job, it would be more due to a lack of experience than anything else. So that's where we stand. And I can talk more about my experience, my clinicals in the future. I don't want to make this episode too overwhelming. I guess I want to talk about some of the stereotypes that I don't want to call them stereotypes. Some of the characteristics I have as an autistic person. I definitely have trouble with eye contact, and I think you'll have to. I always like feedback, so you can tell me how well I was faking it, because at times I'm not looking at the camera. And so maybe you can tell, maybe you can't. I don't know how well I'm faking it, but I'm having trouble actually making eye contact with the camera. And I can talk about why that I believe that is, because I have my own theories on that. But for now, you'll have to watch some other episodes. The other things that I do so, okay, when I was in my autistic denial stage, I'm not autistic, there's no way. One of the things I said was I don't stim. I don't have like a stim, because autistic people stim, So the stereotype, right, would be rocking in their chair. That would be the most recognized stim, from rocking back and forth, and a lot of autistic people do that. I've actually had experiences where I felt like I wanted to rock back and forth, and but I know it's not socially acceptable, so I don't do it. I'm not so sure that what I actually do is any better, but it's something I can't control. This is something I've been doing since my teens, when things got stressful for me socially. But here you are. This is my. Let me see here. Here's my finger, and see that? So I bite my finger, and that's my stim, and that can be while I'm out in public. That could be while I'm driving. That's a frequent period of time when I'll bite my finger. So that's definitely a stim. you wouldn't think is an autistic stim, but it is. And so I don't know how much people notice that or not. I'm not that great at recognizing facial expressions, and actually I'll talk about that in a second. But so as a result, it's hard for me to know. Here I am out in the middle of a Starbucks and I bite my finger because I think of something stressful. And so who knows how much that is noticed. There have been times where I bit my finger and somebody observed me and I noticed that they had. And I'll just sort of like take my finger and kind of go like it's hurting, I'll kind of shake it and act like it's hurting. In other words, maybe, I don't know, I have arthritis or an injury or who knows what they might be thinking, but I'm trying to justify the fact that I just bit my finger so that, I don't know, they don't think I'm a psycho killer or something like that. But what I'm really trying to do is cover up the fact that I was stimming. And I think it probably works. I'm probably pretty convincing. Your hair looks great, buddy.
Thank you.
Yeah, he just took a shower. Yeah. And he's very vain too. So, so I do have a stim, and the other thing that I always thought I didn't have was a sensitivity to fabric. That's to some sort of material. I can't stand touching chalkboards, and I can't stand touching construction paper. I mean, I can't. It feels like so dry. It feels like it's gonna like suck my whole body into into the paper or something. I have. It's hard to explain, but it's this very uncomfortable feeling. It's more than an uncomfortable feeling. It's almost a surreal feeling.
I don't like holding chalk. It makes me feel so uncomfortable.
There you go. So he doesn't like holding chalk. I don't like holding chalk either. I mean, and there are people who are not autistic, and they can have similar issues. So it's not like any one of these things I'm talking about in and of itself alone makes me autistic. It's going to be a lot of characteristics that add up to meet that diagnosis. So, if you're sitting there like, I'm not autistic and I don't like chalkboards and I don't like touching construction paper, that's cool. I get it. But this is just one area where, of many. The other thing I found is that it's something that I do automatically. I don't go home and say, wow, I'm so uncomfortable. But, after a long day of work or whatever, of being out and about, I'll go home and I'll get into my pajamas right away. And that's because it's made out of cotton. It's a looser material. I'm actually in a pajama top right now. And he's not. But it's a looser material. It's made out of cotton, and it feels a lot better than a normal shirt and jeans. Like jeans, I can only wear them for so long.
I don't like jeans because they're so tight on me. I prefer what are those called? The pants I have. Khakis or something. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that's just another area where. It's sort of like something you don't necessarily notice until you start to really look into yourself and try to, observe yourself. So there's that. I definitely. Oh, so here's an interesting one. I mean, this one is this is a biggie, and this is going to be something that is going to be pretty darn sure that you're autistic. So I was looking to, I went on one of the autistic websites, I think it was a forum, and they were advertising for people to try out this program. I think it was going to be a program that was on iOS, so in other words, it was for like iPhones and iPads, things of that nature. This was a program designed to test and teach kids with autism how to recognize facial expressions and what those facial expressions mean. And I figured it would be a cool thing for me to test out with my son, right? And we didn't get that far, and I'll tell you why. So, I mean, prior to that, I had been priding myself on how well I could read people, being somebody who's autistic. In most conversations, at least if it's a personal conversation, I've gotten to the point where I probably, in most cases, can read somebody better than your average non-autistic person. And I'm going to refer to a non-autistic person as a neurotypical. Technically, neurotypical is a term for people with no disorders. So in other words, let's say you are depressed. You technically are not neurotypical. But for my purposes, we'll call all non-autistic people neurotypical. So that being said, I get this program, right? And it's for kids. Not only is it for kids, it's for kids who are autistic. And it had a bunch of pictures on it. And those pictures were of people with various facial expressions. And I'm looking at these pictures, and I'm just looking, and it's like I'm looking and looking, and I can't recognize the facial expressions at all. I can't do it. I'm at the time I'm like 40 years old, and here I am, priding myself on my ability to read facial expressions, to be able to read people, and I'm looking at this very basic set of pictures that are designed for kids with autism, and I literally can't read it. And so, I mean, that's one of those big eye openers right there. That's a clear indication of autism. I mean, that's if you can't read basic facial expressions, then there's a good reason to be concerned. That's a pretty universal and very common. Let's put it this way: if you have this condition where you can't read facial expressions, there's a strong probability of autism that you're on the spectrum. So for me, being somebody who's worked so hard to try to recognize people, at least in individual conversations, what they're thinking, what they're feeling. For me to not be able to read these basic facial expressions, it was humbling. In fact, I'd say I almost had a panic attack after I experienced this. It was a little bit more than I could bear. But that being said, it is not that didn't make it. So the fact that I couldn't recognize those facial expressions in the pictures, right? Those are isolated photos. In other words, those photos are without somebody speaking. I can't hear their tone of voice. I can't hear their body language. So I'll get into this more, but there's reasons why I still can read people. It's not like I incorrectly read people. It's not like that proved it, but it did prove that I can't read facial expressions nearly as well as I thought I could. I mean, in fact, I'd have to say I hardly could do it at all if we base it on this app. So I didn't want. I deleted the app. I was just totally upset, and I never gave it to my son. And I don't even want to look at this thing again because it was very humbling. So I think that's where we're going to end it for tonight.
Can I add in something?
What can you add in? I've
actually had two health problems. One of them was pigeon foot, I think it's called. I'm pretty sure, where my feet aren't straight. And the other one was where I had a problem with my heart, where it beated a lot faster than the normal heart rate of a child.
Oh, we'll get into that.
Yeah.
We'll definitely talk more about that.
We'll get more information in a different video.
Yeah. So that's it for today.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to say?
See you later, and have a good day.
Hey, Jacob.
What up?
All right. Guess what I have?
PTA license.
My PTA license. This is a special day. I just got my PTA license, so I'm gonna open it up without letting you see the information on it.
Yeah. I don't think we want you going to our address or something. That would not be good.
Well, he does. He's very social, you know.
Also,
Guy, yeah.
and not too social. Not that social.
All right. I've never even seen one of these.
Well, yeah. Well, you've never been a PTA before.
Well, that's true.
So
Until now.
Of course, you've never seen a PTA license. Till right now.
There you go.
Packaging is even nice.
Oh my goodness, this is hard to get off. I just don't want to like ruin it.
I can do it. Let me see it.
All right, get in camera. Just don't. Oh,
Shoot,
show
I
this
can't open that. I'm not good at tearing those stupid.
part. You're like, I can do it. Oh, I can't do it.
Oh my! Stop it.
I just don't. It's not so much I can't tear it. It's just I don't want to ruin the.
I can go get scissors. You know? PTA license.
Yay! Oh, I have a card here too.
Hey, where?
Ooh, did I just show it on the screen? All right, maybe I can blur that out. So there's like a card. Oh, it's dropping frames.
Yeah. I don't know why.
Oh well. So this is it. My PTA license.
Well, that's a good thing. That is a good thing, my sir.
All right. And so there's actually a little card around this area where I can take it off and put it in my wallet, which I'm gonna do because it's
Yeah.
awesome. I'll probably get it laminated. And then I have this here, which can get hung on the wall. And
You wanted to get laminated so it would get ruined or something.
Mhm.
It's not just a flimsy piece of card.
Yep. So there it is.